you can create a life that, like I said, that you've never lived before by doing things you've never done before. And it goes back to my comment with all my surgical tech friends and my PA friends and all my doctor friends. And you may know exactly where you're going at tomorrow, but I know exactly what your life's going to be like if you do this for the next 40 years.
So thank you for coming on after having me on yours. And I hear you talking to a bunch of podcasters, getting and doing their seeing what connecting with a bunch of podcasts and ways. How have you been doing during this holiday week and this weird 2020 year?
Right, man, I've been good. The studio's been able to stay open because of we're a media company here in the Tacoma, Washington area. So we're still being able to safely deliver the news to our local area and beyond, and we're excited for all that. So holidays has been so far so good. The Thanksgiving one was a little quiet, so we're expecting probably Christmas and New Year's to be pretty quiet. But from everything that we're doing right now, we're looking to have a very explosive 2021. So I guess I'm okay with the downtime. How
Yeah,
about yourself, man?
I'm feeling that kind of the same way. I've been kind of working myself up and building this brand I've been building, and I've recently just switched to more expansive to include a lot more people. I got the person you've already connected me with. I'm talking with him, JT,
Hmm.
and who's I'm sure has been on. By the way, I need to get all your podcast information. So I think I have subscribed to it on. I think I use Spotify mainly, but
Hmm.
I think I. But I need to make sure I got all that down to make
Hmm.
sure I listen to any of that, especially JT's, since I'm connected with him so far.
Yeah, man.
But I'll
Well,
be.
most of
He's.
our yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just saying most of our stuff is mainly on Facebook and YouTube. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to connecting with JT a little bit further as well. He has a really unique story. So I'm glad that worked out for you guys. And living fairly close to each other, it's going to be even better, right?
Oh yeah, and that just reminded me he's in the same area too. So that one of these days when we're all back together, I've been since I started. I was wondering. I was trying to get in person interviews. So when this all, I'm inspired enough now when we're all ready to get in person. So I've been doing all these via Zoom, Skype,
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
for the 3 years, and I'm pretty much essentially using it to better my conversation skills. So I
Yeah, I
just
mean, it has definitely helped out mine. I mean, I didn't go to school for, broadcasting or public speaking or anything like that. I actually went to school to become a certified surgical tech and first assist. And I was even finishing up my master's degree as a PA, as a physician's assistant, to go into plastic surgery a little bit more, and realized that it was just taking too much of my time out, and, hopped on the Uber and Lyft train there, and was able to make enough. And honestly, just talking to people day by day, through all of that, I was able to develop just being able to conversate, read the room a little bit, and emphasize when we need to emphasize things. But then, but it's been a blessing to just meet so many different people. So 3 years Zoom and running, no matter what, man, you're having those conversations. They're needed, right? And all of that's going to help out because some people ask us, sometimes as podcasters, how easy is it to get in front of people all the time and talk? And really, it isn't. You just get kind of used to it. Um, and so, the more you conversate, the more you meet people, it seems like the better we become, right?
yeah, just like anything else, and just my mom just went. I was hanging with last week. I went down there. She came up here this last weekend. I was down there. She asked me. I mentioned the Lewis Howes thing on your episode,
Mhm.
and I mentioned that many times on this show as well. So if you can go back and hear about that, any listeners listening, but she meant like she's the one who introduced me to Lewis Howes, and
Mhm.
she asked me like, is all is this all because like because podcasting introduces people to so much sharing your voice and
Mhm.
they're noticing that in me. I'm speaking more, I'm talking more, I'm sharing my voice. Is this all because that she shared the School of Greatness podcast with me to listen to? I'm like, kind of, yeah, but it opened my eyes to podcasting. But
Oh
I
yeah.
probably would have found out about this one way or the other because there's YouTube, there's other platforms out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we're waiting on something to be that sign, something to be that open door to really allow us to open up to who we're supposed to be. And it sounds like that was a good connection with that podcast because it seems like you went on the boots running afterwards, huh?
Yeah, and me being a video audio, especially I'm an audio nerd now these days too, and I care about audio, which and in school that's the reason why I kept hearing everyone would forget about audio in their all the productions, and I became really close, paying attention, focused with the audio. I want to just first of all find out just a little about you, what got you started into what you're doing. Just to talk a little about yourself a little more.
Yeah.
I know we opened up with that a little bit, but
Yeah.
go in a little more detail.
Man, I love telling my story, and that's part of why we've been able to build what we've built in such a short amount of time. And um I currently live in the Washington state area, originally from Charleston, South Carolina, and through the military it kind of brought me up here. I have a 11-year-old daughter that I moved up here to be with. And during the time of her mom and I going through a divorce, and me becoming a new person here in the Washington area, um, I just realized that time was really, really precious. And I needed to do whatever I could to be in my daughter's life. And shout out to Marley Grace. That's what her name is, Marley Grace Marlowe. And she's been an inspiration just for me to become better each day. And it doesn't matter where I've come from, how many mistakes I've had, but she's my grace in all of this, in my story. And so when I moved up here and started my new career as a certified surgical tech and first assist. I was working in plastics and general surgery and all of this good stuff. I actually did eyes for a little bit too. I was the one that was surgically trained, and I would remove corneas or do full enucleations after someone would be recently deceased, and that would be an organ donation. And then I would airmail that out to the corporate office and all that good stuff. So I've done a lot of crazy, creepy kind of things in the medical field, but I believe it was all a stepping stone just to bring me up to the Tacoma area to allow me to just open up to, who I am now. And so, always looking for change. I actually met my wife, Sadie, in the medical field, and I believe that was the reason why I was transplanted there. And after we kind of solidified our relationship, um, I just realized that my daughter was in daycare every day, and I was chasing after a job that, because I went to school, I thought I had to do. But honestly, that job brought me up to the Tacoma area, but then it wasn't necessarily needed anymore. So I learned about rideshare, hopped on Uber as fast as I could, and this was in 2017. And this allowed my daughter to stay out of daycare. I was able to, take her to school and pick her up from school, and I was going to all of her award assemblies. And I
Mm.
remember some of the greatest times were us going to the Daddy Daughter Donut Day, which was each year. And so, we had definitely a good tradition for all of that. And I wouldn't have been able to do all that if I would have stayed in the surgical field. And even though that I was trained and went to many years of schooling for it all, I just realized that it was only a stepping stone. And then I just started to develop more on a personal level, got joined in with network marketing, and that just allowed me to open up my minds to other ways of making money, and that there's plenty of money out there. We just have to really have a strategic plan. And if we can, then we can achieve really any goal we want. And during all of this time, I just had this idea of supporting local. And so in 2017, my wife and I got married. And at that point, we were trying to support these local businesses, and we ended up developing a local app here in the Tacoma area that is now downloadable and reachable across the globe now. But it supports local businesses, nonprofits, musicians and artists, podcasters as well now. But this was it was a mobile app that kind of bypassed Google algorithms and gave a local business a chance to be seen in our area. And it was just a great story that we were creating here, and a lot of networking at this time. I'm telling you, a lot of networking. Even with still doing the rideshare during that time, building the business, uh, we met way over 40,000 people within just about 3 years of building this business in the rideshare. But I say all that because I was able to tell my story. I was able to practice my speech. I was able to see what worked and what didn't work. And honestly, I just learned how to build relationships with people. And what mattered was what they matter about. And so that's why we transformed what we were creating, a local based app, into a broadcast and media company, because we were asked to be a sponsor for someone's radio show in 2018. And at this point, my wife and I are working full time at the company, and I was still driving full time for Uber and Lyft. But at this time, we decided to um, sponsor a show, and I left the vision of that of that meeting with the GM with the vision of my own show called Be the Better Local, which was part of our slogan, which was shop local, share local, be the better local. It was an extension of just saying that I support local. It was the action needed to actually support local. Um, and so I brought to life my digital app. All the businesses, all the nonprofits that I was supporting on my app, I would actually interview them on my radio show. So it was really unique getting local musicians and just using the platform that was given to me to help someone else shine in what they do best. And so that's really what BD Local and smart advertising is about, is trying to create a platform meant for the 97 percenters, but it was really meant for the one percenters because of how effective we are. And so we started our radio show. Within just 3 weeks of starting our show, we get an email from the owner of a 56-year-old radio station saying that the radio station is now being bought off. And as of January 2019, the 44 radio shows, 8 employees no longer had a home. And so my wife and I quickly developed the BD Local Podcast Network. We invited the GM of 27 years of that radio station to come along with us. We had the engineer come along with us. And 2019, 8 weeks after ever starting my own show on radio, I'm now airing my own show on my own network. And this is January 2019. This is only last year. And in 2019, the GM, my wife and I, we built a 22 show podcast network. We reached over 500,000 people on Facebook alone, had 380,000 engagements with about 180,000 views on a brand new network. We increased our reachability through social media and the app that we had already developed. So we were already way beyond radio and what they could provide for us. And we lowered the rate. So that's what made us so special, is that we weren't so expensive, making it the same mindset that we were built for the 97 percenters, because of course anybody can come in at X amount that makes millions and millions of dollars a year to be able to come in and pay for $800 worth of recording in one sitting. But if we can lower the rate, make it affordable for the many, then we're able to build a media company that is for the many. So with that being said, the turn of 2020, obviously we had high hopes for everything. More live events, because we were broadcasting events at this time. We were live, we were in front of people doing events, all this good stuff. We're building the podcast network. Everything was great. We had a couple shows go viral. So most of our shows get around 500 to 1,000 views and clicks and all that good stuff per episode. And this one reached 33,000 views in 20 days. It was a great interview on a podcast called Women Can by Morgan Roth. It's sponsored by a company, Guardian Roofing, here in the Washington area. And they just had a great conversation. It went viral. Like I'd never seen any of our shows hit that amount of numbers. And so to reach 33,000 views, we reached over a quarter million, about 300,000 people in 2 months. So as COVID is hitting us at the end of March, mid-March, into March, I'm already reaching my 2019 goals. And with everything shutting down and
Nice.
most people going viral at this time, we were able to just be in the right place at the right time, being a media company and being on social media where that exploded 56% during social, the COVID-19, I mean, it was just crazy amount of numbers. And so to date, now that we're closing in on 2020 now, we are just realizing the fact that we've already reached 2 million people. So half a million. So we've reached about 1.5 million people this year through COVID during all of this craziness. And you just have to look at the blessing in between the madness that is here in 2020, where we were able to step out and help people reach the people that they want to be able to reach with their stories. So it's been a crazy ride. We've met over social media. I'm blessed to be a part of the podcast community here locally and on a national and international basis. We're creating alliances with so many people. We got so much to come with podcast tours, in person, off Zooms, all this great stuff to come. So, and that's kind of like our story. And so, thank you for allowing me to share that with you, my friend.
Yeah, that's you didn't spare any detail on that. That was great, great little story there. I did a bunch of questions came to see if they can come back to my memory here, but a bunch of questions popped up
Mhm.
during that. First one is I know it's talk about how this has become a family affair for you. Mm.
Well, yeah. Well, it seems like when a lot of people want to take a hobby into a business and they want their family to support them, they have to see your dedication. Through all of this, my wife Sadie has seen me as a certified surgical tech, first assist, going to school for my master's degree, changing that, driving all of this. Like I said, I met about 40,000 people through Uber and Lyft, but besides driving and all these different things. And then we started a company. She still wasn't convinced. She was still working her job full time when I was doing all this. But it was the fact that in the beginning of all of this, my mom was there and I was telling her the creative side of the story, what I wanted to see. My best friend of 20 plus years was there and we were just trying to again brainstorm and have this creative idea that was rolling months before we ever created the company. My wife was there side by side with me through all the long nights and late and early mornings and having crazy visions that no one would think would be happening because it started on a whiteboard and then it got into a business plan and then it became an app and now I've built 5 studios in 2 years.
Wow.
um, Family support it has been everything for us because again, part of my story in the beginning was the fact that I was going through a divorce. I knew absolutely nobody except for my daughter and my ex-wife, and I got 50-50 custody. And so this has been the driving factor since day one, is to create a life that is designed, not necessarily something that I had to settle into just because I went to college. So to me, family has been the backbone to all of this because I wouldn't have been able to do it.
And and one more thing before I move on to next little point here. When it comes, one thing about all these start up podcasts and people are like, we're gonna get in and make money. Like you gotta know, first of all, 20 every year that we go through, and it's just real quick
Mhm.
before I about talking about intention, and every year comes up with this. November, October, November, December comes around. I end up seeing a theme in every year, and I can go deeper into what like years that, and that's another story maybe for another day. But and that's an interesting story about my how my career in the media business started. But 2020, I've been seeing it started out like, well, 2020 is gonna blow up, like you said, it's gonna blow up for me. It's gonna be major things in 2020. 2020 is gonna be good to us, and now after going through, it's like, well, was it really good to you? Well, it depends on your viewpoint, but I see it as we're going through this focus. Imagine what you focus on sets
Mhm.
your intentions, and we got more than ever in this year alone. We got to know where we're going, what we're doing there exactly, and it's the year of direction started out, but it's been the year of intention,
Mhm.
unlearning your intentions.
Yeah. I like that. Having a purpose-driven life.
And I think that's where a lot of my stuff came from, thinking
Mhm.
of intention. And I need to open it up more because I'm not covering everyone I wanted to cover, and I realized that.
Mhm.
But back to my question before I
Mhm.
move on, that all these people with their intentions of starting a podcast, they want to go and write from to get make money. They oh we want to how do you get your podcast to make money, monetize? You mentioned sponsorships. What maybe one thing that took off for you
Mhm.
after how you got to your 1,000,000, 2,000,000 views on your show?
Yeah. Well, I learned quickly that sponsorships, even in 2019, when we were, or I mean, 2018 with Lyft, that, people have money. They'll support you and your story just as long as you have a purpose and a story to tell. And I only say that is because some people just drift through life and they don't really have anything interesting to say because I love all my nurses or all my surgical techs, but if you went to school for surgical tech and you did that for 40 years, it's not interesting to me. And so there wasn't much change. And um, so when I learned more about sponsorships, as long as you're telling your story and you can do exactly what you can say you can do and more, I always bring more. So I actually undersell and over deliver. Um, that's what I did. And honestly, I learned that not only billion-dollar corporations like Lyft are willing to support local podcasters like myself, as long as you know the right people, but you can also just connect with your local businesses because, again, if you think of it as advertisement, local businesses, regardless, are going to push out some sort of advertisement if they like to or not. So if you can get ahead of their advertisement and ask them if they're willing to support you as a sponsor, then they're able to still spend that money that is budgeted for marketing and advertisement, but on your show. And now you're helping out a local business, and that local business is funding you for your time. A lot of people just don't realize that how much expensive they are. And if you actually make yourself less expensive, then you can create a life you've never lived and you can help out local businesses. And that's really has been a big key to our success is knowing that there's very little lift. There's one lift, but there's 50,000 local businesses in my city here within a 5-10 mile radius. And I can reach them to offset my cost versus lift,
Hmm.
if that makes sense, right?
That's a good tip, and it's great. I know of a lot of people who then maybe not so much like they cut it back, they change as businesses change, but Lyft,
Mhm.
rideshare in general, great way to meet people,
Mhm.
especially
Mhm.
in podcasting is another great way to meet people too. I want to get into more of the journey, and you may have started went into that already, but what has the journey been like with creating your future? I'm going reading right from the point that you provided.
Um, it's been scary as hell because a lot of people realized that this year of 2020, you can have hopes and dreams, and then they can just turn around and not be what's expected and total change. But most people only found that out because of COVID. Being a business owner and trying to develop your future from nothing, and then now having a wife and 2 kids that are looking for you to support. And now you have podcasters. I have over 48 different shows that record with us. And then their sponsors that are looking for us for success and connectivity with the communities. So it's been scary as hell because sometimes you just got to put the big boy pants on or the big girl pants on and do the unimaginable. And that's what I have loved about this same thing is the fact that I've been able to create something from a whiteboard, from an idea to a whiteboard to an actual business to a working profitable business where, you know, we're actually paying ourselves and all this good stuff and this is what we do full time. So it's been scary but the most fun I've ever had in my life because everything I do can go towards success. And if it doesn't, then I don't hold on to it and I just keep creating until something sticks on the wall because this is all we have to do. A lot of people have 9 to 5s and stuff like that. We don't do that anymore. Like we're able to create daily for our life. And when you realize that you can design a life and most people can, you just have to be humble yourself and not be so expensive. Um, and you can create a life that like I said that you've never lived before by doing things you've never done before. And it goes back to my comment with all my surgical tech friends and my PA friends and all my doctor friends, and you may know exactly where you're going at tomorrow, but I know exactly what your life's going to be like if you do this for the next 40 years. And I don't want that type of predictability. I want the time with my family versus knowing that I have job security. So,
Yeah, I same way. I love that too. Like, and the reason, one of the big things why I continue to do it, it's not making me money right now, and that's not really my intent. One day, hopefully, whether it's a year, few months, 2 years, whatever. I do. I enjoy having the conversation. I love the conversation, and so much. I got a little quick Toastmaster story, like to like when you first given talking about that speeches and giving those speeches, and your first one is you have like 6 minutes to give a little speech on yourself, and then you go into 7 minutes. And when you first start and people are terrified of public speaking, they don't know what they're going to say. That was me. I don't.
mhm.
I was always afraid of not having enough to say, but once I started, 7 minutes was not enough time. And I'm seeing the same thing in podcasting when I have these conversations and I get
Mhm,
actually into the flow. They talk about find your flow.
mhm,
And before I know it, I'm actually going over. I try to keep episodes to around an hour, but
mhm.
sometimes I'm in the flow and we've been talking for an hour and 30 minutes.
Wow.
Or at least 1 or 2 episodes went I had that long of an episode.
Mhm.
I just kept going and I just got in the flow of the conversation. And the task is not trying to find enough to fill the hour, to keep everything within the hour is the hard part.
But that's also the fun part of what we do though, because I kind of tease my author friends that are writing books because they just spend a ton of time putting it into writing, and just the process of releasing it, getting it edited and published and all of this stuff. And it's amazing, but honestly, as soon as you print it, it's done. And so what I love about podcasting is that even though you had that hour long conversation, the next day, let's have another hour long conversation, because that's how life is. Life is
Mm-hmm.
adaptable, it's fluid, it's continuous. And that's honestly one of the best things that I love about podcasting and radio and broadcasting and news and media, is the fact that we can be as consistent as we want to be. And I love it.
Let's see if I'm going off. I wanna touch on as many of this about yourself as possible here. How I have this question, just I'm forgetting what I'm or I
No, you're good, man.
today's company mirror. Oh, the first you mentioned a little bit of what your vision for what you had.
Hmm.
Does it mirror now what you have, en- what you envisioned in the first place?
Um, Not really. And kind of what I was getting at is,
Evolving.
just understanding, yeah, it's evolving. And one of those things that a lot of people said this year was pivoting, but we're always adapting to change, and we're trying to always become better. And in the beginning, this was just an app. I wouldn't say just
Hmm.
an app. It was an app that I was actually launching in the back of Uber and Lyft here in the area. I had over 580 drivers in a 100-mile radius, of my city, that were driving Uber and Lyft clients on a daily basis, that had my app displaying in the back of the car. So that's where the beginning was just to support the local community, kind of like a digital yellow book that you could listen and watch, and it would change as you entered in new area codes, versus what we see now when you Google something and it's done off of AI, not necessarily done off of where you are geographically. So it's been one crazy ride, because as soon as we went into radio, it turned from just an app to now broadcasting and radio, to now podcasting and now podcast network. And the app is just as involved, but it's still kind of like a sleeping giant, because again, my hopes and dreams is to still have anywhere you travel, from here to Dallas over there, or in Texas, you know that it all support local businesses no matter where you travel. And so it kind of has the same idea, but my first business plan did not have a recording studio. It had nothing about podcasting. It had nothing about live events. It had everything about an app that I was trying to support local businesses with. And it's become more and better, but at the same time, I can't imagine what next year's going to look like. I mean, I can try, but as you see, like 2020 here, uh, our expectations are one thing, but when the day comes, it is another thing. So,
Start messy and don't aim for the perfection, because I mean it's not gonna come. It's
mhm.
always uh, saying out there to strive, always strive for perfection, but never get to it.
Right, right. I don't need to be
Never
perfect.
will.
I need to know enough to get me to this level, until I need to know enough to get me to that level. And then I have a stepping stones of enough, because like you said, man, if you try to perfect something, you'll just be in this wormhole of trying to do something you'll never achieve.
As one thing I thought of, like take interesting topic to me during this for this rideshare thing,
Hmm.
and it came up like I like conversations are random and random conversations. Did you ever thought or did it ever happen where you had, I know it would be horrible audio for the most part, but did you ever think about having an episode with a passenger?
Um, that was part of.
How could you even get that done? Do that and
Well, one of the first people that I interviewed on my radio show when we were on radio was the Seattle Carpool Karaoke. And so he actually had cameras in his car. He would record on his GoPros, and he would let people sing karaoke in his car, and then he would publish it on social media, and they would pay him $1 to sing it in his car, and then you would sign his car and all that good stuff. It was pretty fun stuff. Well, our app had music videos on it, and it still does, and it has music and podcasts on there. So we had an idea of that same thing, of being able to record conversations or people having karaoke and, Uber and Lyft again, and having that type of entertainment, and it's still possible. Uh, so, but where it is now, I don't know. I kind of want to stay away from rideshare a little bit until COVID
Yeah.
cleans up a little bit. But I think that's why we shifted into podcasting, so we can just bring on the locals, meet them, and get a better conversation than maybe a 3 to 5 minute conversation.
Kind of getting to my what I how I like to wrap up like these shows. Why do you like to create?
I there's probably a lot of reasons why I like to create. I like to create because it keeps me on a level playing field, where that if I keep creating, somebody may not like this, and now I'm shot down, I'm rejected. But the more I create, the more I fine tune what people like. I fine tune what I like, and what the community's enjoying and seeing, and all this stuff. And so I like to create, because if we don't create something, it's kind of like what we said on our show, on my show with you, and why you got into what you got into. You couldn't believe that there wasn't any more creating for movies, right? I mean, we've seen duplication after duplication, and it's hard to fathom that there wasn't creativity. And so being able to have a mind where I can create, um, I've learned, is limitless. There's no limit to creativity. You just have to be willing to accept what you create.
8 billion plus counting people on the world, and there's no more creativity on this world. Yeah, it's just hard
Um,
to believe that.
it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe.
So, and touching up on what do you currently do that involves, obviously I know the one thing, but that involves creative work,
Mhm.
or more of this, what's all involved.
Yeah. So, just as services wise on what we do, we help podcasters grow their podcast, regardless if they're just starting or if they're an influencer, through content creation, recording, video and audio editing, as well as creating live events and virtual events, on a national level. So there's a lot of creating that we do. We have personal clients that I create photo memes of on a daily basis, so they have content to push out on their social media. Um, and then just having my own show, my own podcast show. I have a daily show that's coming up here in 2021 as well. And so that's going to be more of a news style show. But again, all of that's going to be creating a conversation that hasn't happened yet, to entice and educate our community on what's happening here, within our city limits. So we're excited for all that. And so it seems like daily creating is happening. And then when I do art projects with my daughters, that's always creating as well. So I'm excited for those days too.
Nice. And last question, I like to always ask this question to everyone too, but how can we follow, support, how can we support what you're doing?
For sure. And thank you again for allowing me to be on your show, my friend. It's been great connecting with you, and being able to see where this can go, just knowing people that we know, and doing this thing called life a little bit easier now that we know each other. But On Facebook and Instagram, we're at BD Local Media. We're a podcast community and network on social media. On YouTube, we're there as well, BD Local Media. And we also have our own app downloadable for the iOS system at BD Local. And if you have an Android, we're test driving the Android system right now, and that's called Backseat Driver. So we have our own app, and we also are on social media. So check us out and support, and actually reach out to all of our other podcasters as well. Let them know that you heard us live here, and so with keeping it real.
That's intriguing. What how you call that the backseat driver or the backseat
Right. I mean,
driver app?
that's what it started with. BD was actually backseat driver, and so I mean, again, that's how it all transformed. And now, there's many, I don't know, you know runoffs with the BD. So Boss Daddy, I got a Boss Daddies group on social media that I help entrepreneur dads, and best daughters are living our best days, or billion-dollar company one day, or helping a billion locals, or business district, another thing here in the local area, and actually anywhere. So it's been it's been pretty fun seeing it all transform.
So is there any specific handles or you mentioned it like handles, social media or a website?
You can go to our website also at bdlocal.us. And we chose US because we wanted to incorporate us as a community. So bdlocal.us. I appreciate you guys for supporting and being
Nice.
able to allow us to share our story with you.
Well, I'll take this time before I get into my official wrap up questions. I have three that I like to keep
Mhm.
secret. If you've heard, you know the questions I ask, but I acknowledge you for pushing through the big tech algorithms and staying local in the community, and acknowledge you to getting your stuff out to the local crowd.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
And it's tough is to when all the intention is set on the big algorithms and
Mm.
they're getting their attention and not so much the locals. More attention needs to be there, so it's
We'll get
always
there one day.
tough.
I'm not afraid of that.
So my first of the questions after I go through all the links and everything where you can be found, say hey to Tim on social media, is around filmmaking. I started with this filmmaking, but I'm branching out, and
Mhm.
I still like to ask this question: why do you think filmmaking or storytelling is important in our world today?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that's why it makes social media as big as it is right now, because it gives people a platform to tell their story. And it's valuable more today than ever because we actually have the access to and the technology to record our story. We didn't have all this technology years ago, decades ago, centuries ago. And so we know very little of our past. It was only what was handwritten and told by stories, and continued that way. But 2020, it doesn't matter what age from here on out, you could see probably the entire year COVID-19 and everything on someone's YouTube channel. I'm sure they're going to do a year review on it. So um, but that's just where it is these days. And I think it's so important because we can get lost in all these filters. And if we aren't telling our own story, then we aren't living with the person that we have to live with most in this life, and that's ourselves. So you've got to get out there, get excited for your story, and go tell it to somebody. You'll be surprised who's going to be
Oh
interested.
yeah. And I wanted to bring that up earlier too when you mentioned it. Like getting scared of, you want to go do this thing, you want to bust out of your 9 to 5 corporate job somewhere, but you're afraid to go out and do this one, jump out of your shell. If you just go do it, or if you a lot 2020 has been forcing us to actually do that.
Mhm.
Listen to yourself, learn about yourself in isolation, which is scary to a lot of people,
Mhm.
and it's forcing us to do that. But so many people are learning about what they like, what they are
Yeah.
doing. and it's their
Yeah.
story. They got to, and now 2021 will be all about telling that story.
As it should be, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that was stuff that we had talked about, as soon as COVID was hitting and, March, April, what was going to come from this year and the creativity that was going to come
Uh,
from this year.
so much
When
learning.
you know what I'm saying, when we're now able to stop, slow down from our day-to-day life and actually think about the things that we like and don't like and actually do them. And it's been a crazy ride. I'm sure you've seen it left and right, but we've seen it as well in the businesses that we're building during this time, the podcasts that had started during this time. And so I'm just excited for kind of why we're here, for all the creatives out there, because it's time for you to
Yes.
shine in what you do best.
All right. Next question is kind of a theme inspiration question. I pulled it from, it was called The Three Truths from the other show that I started listening to, my
Mhm.
inspiration. But I perfect ending to your life, many years down in the future. You've lived the life you wanted to live. You've done everything that you wanted to do. You have podcasts that reaches all around the world and everything. But it comes to that day where you gotta reflect and move on to the next life,
Mhm.
or the next wherever you're gonna go after this life.
Mhm.
What is that perfect? And it's more for a creative, get your creative juices thinking flowing. What is your perfect ending to your story?
Yeah. I think this is what has allowed me to, again, be so comfortable with telling my story, is the fact that I think I already knew that answer. And that's kind of what's driven me from day one to be where I am now. And is that I looked at the end in mind first. And people say that all the time, but they're looking at success as a business standpoint. I was looking at success as a personal, reflective of life itself. And so what I tell people is the fact that I want a life where my daughters and my wife and the people that I love most know that I did, and I woke up every day to create a life where we can live together and have experiences, and that when that day comes, they're not stuck with hours of trying to think of memories, or days or weeks trying to think of memories of me and interacting with them. They're going to be speaking for hours and days about all the memories that we did create together. And that falls back on how I lost my father about 10 years ago. And I'm just limited with the memories that I have with him. And I wish I could tell more to my daughters, and I just can't. So the only thing I can do is to continue to do everything I can, so when I do leave this earth, they know I did everything I could to be in their life.
Wow. And the final question I have, and it was kind of, I think might have asked it already, but I'd like to start asking this question too. What does it mean to create, or to put something out there, or what does it mean to create?
It means that there's hope for tomorrow. It means that if we can do something today and create something new, that what we have today, if you had to show the world the deck of cards, the hand that we're dealt, it shows that we have hope for tomorrow. If we can create something new today, well, that's what tomorrow is today. So create, 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 because that's our hope for tomorrow.
Thanks. Go out there and create. Love that answer. I just thank you for coming on, and we'll look forward to. I have so much stuff we can talk. Do a whole nother episode tomorrow if we wanted to. It's just like a regular radio show, but we.
Right. Well, thank
But
you for allowing me on your show, my friend. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
thank you so much for listening to this episode with my conversation with Tim of the BD Local podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, please share this with your fellow filmmakers, friends, storytellers, creators, anyone just stuck safe at home during this 2020 pandemic-filled year. Comment on why you liked it, what stood out to you on social media. You can follow me always at The Real Sweet Tea on all social platforms. Be sure to check back here for weekly episodes. Give a shout out to Tim. He is on Facebook and YouTube mainly. He has a website. I'll have all his stuff linked up in the show notes. Be sure to check out his pages and everything in the notes. Let him know you heard him on the show and just reach out and say hey to him. And also let me know how I'm doing. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give me a review and let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, what I may need to change. Thank you for listening and subscribing to Keeping It Real. I hope you got some value from this episode.